Today we have a slightly unusual and exciting episode. We have someone who has become a recent friend of mine, Mark, from Forever Projects, which I still think is one of the coolest names. God knows how that was available. But I'm not going to tell you about that. I want Mark to tell you about that, and I want to tell you what he's trying to achieve and the amazing story as to how he got to where he is and the story he's going to write going forwards, which to me is just out of this world. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be connected.
Good to see you again. It's been a couple of months since you were last up here, right?
Yeah.
So you're Melbourne-based normally?
I'm Wollongong.
Wollongong. It's not that far.
Up the coast? No.
I was down in Osborne House over the weekend.
Oh, wow.
So it would have gone straight past you.
There you go.
It's
a beautiful spot, isn't it?
Why did I think you were Melbourne? One of our, Dana, who works at Nudge, lives down that way. She lives in Coaldale, which I think is a little
a little bit
nearer.
north. That's right at the heart of our community.
Yeah.
Coaldale, Austin Mere.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Anyway, we digress. Forever Projects. So before we tell everyone what it is, how did you get that name? Because that's one of those names you think, there's no way that's available.
Yeah. So great friend of mine, Ben, designer, brand, and we were kind of in the early days wrestling with how do we go from the organisation in Tanzania that had a name that was kind of connected to that but wasn't going to be really palatable to something that people would really grasp and get. And like all great creatives just said, it's Forever Projects.
And it was available.
Well, it was kind of available, and we kind of got it and did some, stuff with trademarks.
Some clever
and IP.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Tanzania there, so I think we better explain what it is you do, because everyone's going, Tanzania?
Yeah.
So for the sake of the audience, describe in your own words, what is Forever Projects?
Yep. So we're a non-profit on a mission to end the orphan crisis in Tanzania through income creation for women and then nutrition for their babies.
Big mission.
Yeah.
Awesome mission. So, mention Tanzania again. Why, out of all the places in the world, because it's not exclusive, this issue to Tanzania, why Tanzania?
Yeah, so my wife, Anna, and I were living and working there back in 2010. I'm a maths teacher by trade.
Yep.
And Anna's a school counsellor psychologist. So we moved there with our 4 and 1-year-old in 2010 and working at this international school, like right in the southern slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
So I'd walk out my front door. The commute to work was 156 metres or something. Look to your left, the clouds would part, Kilimanjaro's just there. We're living and working there, and we'd always really felt strongly about opening up our family to kids who didn't have that hope of a family of their own. So during our 3.5 years living and working there, we went from 2 kids to 5 and fostered and eventually adopted.
Which is wild. It's wild. I mean, I've got 2. I couldn't imagine 5. But let's rewind a little bit. So obviously you teach by trade, as you said. Is your wife a teacher by trade?
She's a psychologist.
That's right. Yep. So you've got a 1 and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
You're living here in Australia, very safe environment. What possesses you to go, you know what? We're going to take our 1 and 4-year-old to Tanzania. It's something people often do when they're pre-children.
Yeah.
It's not something you usually do when you're young children.
Yeah.
How did that come about? What was compelling enough to make you want to take your family over there? Because it's a massive step.
Yeah, and obviously we didn't just wake up one morning and say, hey, let's do this.
And Tanzania, it's not.
Completely.
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah. It's not just your status quo decision. So,
no, it's not.
Yeah, so maybe 3 years before that, we were watching TV one night. Our eldest was 6 months old.
Yep.
Situation like this, throw on the TV. Jackson, our eldest, is sleeping soundly on the couch, and we're watching this documentary about. It wasn't the most feel-good kind of after dinner doco. It was called The Dying Rooms, and it was about these. We just happened to stumble upon it. It was about these kids who had been abandoned in a developing country, and they were just left effectively to die because there just wasn't enough resources and support and love and nutrition for these kids. And these volunteers had kind of snuck in these videos to kind of expose what was going on. And we just had one of those moments where we're looking at this going, this is the same world. Here's our 6-month-old sleeping, safe, sound. Like if either of our parents came to visit, they'd push each other out of the way to give them a hug. And so that was the first moment we thought, okay, what would it look like to open and family up to maybe, look at the domestic foster care or something like that. And so 3 years later, we're at a point where we were really no further on that journey. The Australian system's pretty bureaucratic and it feels like that the child-centric kind of putting kids first isn't really at the heart of the model. And we'd always wanted to live and work abroad, so put those things together and we ended up in Tanzania. And it was a place that we were like, you couldn't move anywhere in the world, but it was a country where for some reason we just felt strongly about Africa as a continent. It needed to be a place that was going to be safe for our 4 and 1-year-old, where we could get a job, where the adoption laws would be compatible with moving home. So that was the place we landed on.
I mean, it's still very nonchalant to go, we want to work abroad. So Tanzania. Yeah. I mean, that's still a big jump. Yeah. Tell me about the thought process of that. Having been a parent, mine are teenagers now, so I'd gladly take them anywhere and leave them. But no, I'm kidding. But how do you sort of discuss taking your children look, Tanzania is one of the safer areas of Africa, but at the end of the day, it's not as safe an environment as they were in. How do you sort of weigh that up? And I guess, what do you think it is that makes someone like you and your wife actually go and do that? Because I think, there's a lot of things that people talk about doing in their lives. It could be starting a company, it could be buying a holiday home, and they don't even do that. We're talking about moving your family into a completely different environment. I'm interested to know what you think it is that sort of drives that, because as a teacher and a psychologist, you're not natural risk takers. And that's what I find probably more fascinating than anything.
Yeah. Such a great question. I think I ended up in teaching because I'd said no to a series of things. Like, loved listening to one of your episodes recently with someone, and you're talking about, your traditional career in, I think it was investing at the start.
Yeah.
You're like, nah, it's not for me. So I started out as an accountant.
Yep.
Within 6 months.
So many people start out as accountants.
Yeah. And mate, I'm so glad I've done that now with, Forever Projects and having that understanding. But it was a series of try this, that's not for me. And then ended up in teaching, enjoyed it. But then within a couple of years, I looked around in the organisation, couldn't see myself really in a role where I'm like, I'm aspiring for that. And I was already, okay, the thing I love about this is curating an environment for kids to learn and grow in. And I'm also the kind of personality that, like, okay, I'm bored of that now, what's next? And I couldn't see then what next in that industry.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know what the next was. I'd run out of ideas. And so I think personally, like moving on to the other side of the planet and having an adventure and all sorts of stuff, that really appealed. And I think just Anna and I, as people, were like, we didn't want to kind of get to 50, 60, look back and go, oh, what if we had a strong conviction about this? And that to us was scarier than the risk of going.
I mean, that's a founder mindset.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, as you've now discovered.
I didn't know that at the time.
No, you didn't. Yeah. I don't think anyone knows they're a founder until they're a founder. So, okay, so you've made this huge call. You've moved over there. You've got jobs. You're teaching and the psychology work, right?
Yep.
You're looking to adopt. Might as well take 3 if you're going to take any, right? But how do you then get to where you are now in terms of Forever Projects? Just talk me through that little part, because I think that's another big leap. I mean, I know you're kind of all in, so why not? But I'm just intrigued as to how that panned out.
Yeah. Well, we didn't move there intending to then come back and start a charity. I think it's like any journey where you go, what's the next thing? Which is the thrill about it, right?
And how long were you there?
We were there 3.5 years.
Yeah, which is quite a long time.
Yeah. And that was... like the adoption kind of process there is that you've got to be a working resident in the country, 3-year process. Social worker comes to your home, does a report every 3 months. And so, like, it's necessarily challenging. You don't want to be able to just turn up there and go, oh, today I feel like adopting a child. But during the years that we were living and working there, like, I remember the day we left the baby home, the orphanage with our 3, walking past 57 other kids.
Oh my God, that would be awful.
Yeah. And just, you're walking out the driveway and just going, like, what would need to have changed in those 57, but also our 3, their mum's biological mum's story, so that abandonment and that malnourishment could have been avoided. And so that question was the next question I think we naturally started asking ourselves. And we didn't know to ask that until we were kind of in it.
On the way out. And is it abandonment as opposed to like parents passing away or something like? Is abandonment typically the normal way that it ends up?
Could be both. So it could be that a mum's too sick to produce breast milk, and alternatives to breast milk are just completely unaffordable. So for context, in Australia you could buy a tin of formula milk if you weren't able to produce breast milk and go to Woolies and pay $35 a tin.
Yep.
In Tanzania it'd be like for an average Tanzanian their entire week's wage. Yeah. So imagine just pop down a Woolies Metro, and on the price tag, it's $1,100 for a tin. Or if the mum's passed away tragically through childbirth or some other disease, and an aunt or a grandmother steps in to care for them, they also aren't lactating. They've got the same obstacle.
Yeah.
So it's not that they don't want to keep their children or their grandchildren. Or their next. It's just, it's that choice or watch them become malnourished. So the team that we'd adopted through were committed to going, that's the problem we actually need to try and solve, and providing a home for children who've been abandoned is better than what we'd seen on TV. But what's the next click up? And so they started testing a pilot project where women would be caught in, like, not caught, but like supported in that crisis point before separation. Yep. And then they kind of joined a program of 60, 70 women a week. Each week they'd turn up, they'd receive nutrition for their child, but they'd be part of a community. And they'd receive training from the team, disease prevention, how to provide nutrition to the kids safely, but then on the journey to setting up a small business. So they'd kind of work out what skills and interests do you have, they'd visit them in their home, what's economically viable, and then how could we create a business that would mean that this is a hand up, not a handout. Yeah. And they were just piloting that, and their budget was $4,000 for the year. And they said to us as we were asking these questions, like, because we said, what can we do to help? And they said, money will help us further test this out. So on a visit home, mid-2012, we said, well, let's just, all of our friends and family are curious about what the heck we're doing. Let's get them all in a cafe. Let's raise some money, but let's do it in a way that is true to, these are our friends and family. We're not going to shake them down for money and say, hey, here's the starving African children. So we took some of the early kind of stories of the women who had started these businesses and set the cafe up like an art gallery. And we just hung up these 16 stories around the space. Our friends ran the cafe and they said, you've got it for free, all good. Everyone came in on the night, cost nothing. And then we just said, this is the closest thing we can do to connect you to our experience in Tanzania and the hope that's here. Like if you feel inspired to give. And they gave 16 grand, 60 people. And so that quadrupled the whole budget.
Wow.
And then they said, okay, we can really run with this. And the year later, they then, we got that 60 people back together again, 16 new stories, and said, this is where your money went last year. And that trust and attention loop being completed.
Yeah.
Two things. Number one, team on the ground were going, this pilot's working, we want to scale it. And our friends and family were saying, we love being connected to where our money's going and seeing the difference it makes. So that was kind of the heart of it for projects. It's what if we turn that into a all-round, all-year thing for everyone, not just an annual thing for our friends and family.
Yeah, and I've seen some of the video footage you've got, and it is that connection. And I think you don't get that with many charities. You really don't. Obviously, you had the sponsored child thing, which was new when I was growing up. I remember, and we did that as a family quite on a few occasions. We had them on the fridge and all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, media makes the connection even easier. But there's still not many charities that actually, or non-for-profits who actually connect you with what they're trying to do well. I don't think, and I think you're right by saying, this is what's happened, or this is what's happening, and then here's your money, great. But then this is what your money did, and to be able to do it in that fashion, I think that there's a whole new sense of connection to where your money's going, which makes you want to do it again. It's proven it. This as well as anyone. You get a far more greater kick out of giving someone something than you do out of getting something for yourself, and this is probably an even greater kick again, I think.
Totally, yeah. And I think I love the thing I think that really aligns us is, you clearly lead with empathy yourself. You're what's it like to be a founder or a scale-up person, and how do I show up where they're at, create value, and solve their problem? And that's from a really abundant posture. You're not giving with an agenda, and I think we want to have that same posture to our community. If some kid gets $5 pocket money, why should she not have the same dignity as some tech founder that's given 10 million? And I think that tech allows us to be able to create that dignity and connection at scale in a way that we maybe couldn't.
Yeah, I think you're right. So you're very embedded in my world, in the startup world, right? Which is the last place you would think you would go. You think, got to raise money, save the children, create programs. Let's go to the startup founders who've got no money. Yeah. So how is that? Because I remember when I first met you, I was like, "This is really strange."
Yeah, what are you doing here?
Yeah, why are you here? It was a birthday party, right? Yeah. But it was, and then I see you with all the startup stuff everywhere, and I'm like, so what happened there? Why are you not shaking down Westpac? Why are you in this ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, I think just by naivety. I'm not a
best answer for ages anyone's given.
I'm a maths teacher.
Yeah.
I'm not a charity founder person.
No.
And what I'm trying to do is go, how do I delight people and connect them to what is happening? And how do I get really curious about what's working, what's not? And how do you just, as you know, as a founder, you're just following leads and seeing what's going on.
You do.
Yeah. So our accountant back in the early days just said, look, my gut is that I should connect you with one of my clients. He works at Macquarie in some investment venture thing. I'm not quite sure what that is. Caught up with him. He immediately said, you seem to be, the way you structured your organization and the way you're kind of approaching things is more like a startup than a non-profit traditionally. There's this guy, Ian Gardner at Innovation Bay. I think you should meet him. So we had a coffee end of 2019 and I'm like, innovation what? I don't know. What's going on here? I don't know what a startup or tech thing is. And Ian.
They're the forefathers of startup world. The Innovation Bay really are. They are.
And the generosity which he, creates space for some random guy from Wollongong who's teaching maths full time trying to get a charity off the ground. Had a coffee, he said, you're definitely running a startup, join our community.
Yep.
So that happened at the start of end of 2019, start of 2020. And then the first event I went to was an International Women's Day event where Catherine McConnell from Bright was speaking.
Yep.
And then I met Hannah Fields, sat next to her. Within a week, we're in lockdown.
Yeah.
And so I've just left my full-time job to
awesome.
Go. This is the time to scale up for the projects.
5 kids.
Well, we had a surprise 6 when we moved home. So I got 6 kids.
True, of course, I forgot.
They're all learning school, learning from home.
6
I'm in this study trying to how do I justify my decision to leave my full-time job? Put away the head of maths thing, go part-time, and I'm in this small study going, what do I do next? Well, the obvious thing seemed to be, I'm part of Innovation Bay. Ian's showing up generously, running like webinars on startups and this stuff. I'm like, I'm just going to do a deep dive in this whole thing. And then within a couple of months, and I think naturally as a teacher and just my personality, I'm like, I love people. And I've learnt where to put my imposter, and that if I can show up and actually see someone where they're at, listen to them, connect, add value, then I'm not scared to do that.
Yeah.
And so through all the things that they curated, I was able to really build a great network within a couple of months online.
I have a theory on this. By the way, I wish I'd had a maths teacher like you. I never met a maths teacher that was so engaging. So I have a theory on this, and I've kind of taken it, and I was thinking about this yesterday when I was thinking about today's episode. If you go back to Sunday school, and I'm not religious, but I was sent to Sunday school my whole youth, there was always the story about the collection and how the person with the most gave the least, and the person who only had one coin gave the whole coin, right?
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I talk so much on this show about the startup community and how founders who are the least sort of, I guess, able to give their time, give more time than anyone. You know, they are more time poor than pretty much anyone in the world, particularly parent founders.
Yeah.
And yet they always find a way to help, and it's such a collaborative community. And then I guess it's the same thing, right? This is the same principle. Even though you're in the startup community, you've been embraced. It's very easy to network. People are willing to give all sorts of things. And it doesn't matter whether it be time, whether it be, it really doesn't matter. It's there, it's a willingness. Whereas perhaps in corporate world, they make you work a little bit harder for it.
Totally.
And I think really when you're raising money from a charity perspective, it's not about getting big chunks of money out of one person. It's about getting lots of people involved in every aspect of it. And the startup community couldn't be a better place to do that because that's just how it is.
Yeah.
That's my theory,
Yeah.
which I think goes all the way back to my Sunday school days, which was just bizarre. I was thinking maybe this is just human nature.
Yeah.
The people who've got the least of certain things are more willing to give them than the people who have the most. Which maybe who knows why? I don't think I don't think you should judge anyone for that. It just seems to be one of those things.
Agreed. And it's funny, like this is the second podcast in a row where that exact story
Really
came up. I was down in Melbourne on last week, and then Matt and the team at Birchall.
Yes,
So
very
it was
well.
Emily's podcast, and Emily, who was interviewing me.
I was talking to Emily this morning on Zoom about an hour ago.
You're joking.
No, we do lots with Birchall. We're doing some recruitment for them. We help them with capital raising, all sorts of things.
They're legends. And that she brought up that same story.
We have to get this podcast out before Birchall do now. And now I know that.
So good.
I'm going to call her again and say, no, when's your podcast come out? I'm just interested to know. We'll make sure. That's so bizarre.
Yeah. And I think the thing that positioned us to be able to show up in the startup space and say giving isn't one-dimensional and is of one magnitude was this maybe culture and this mantra we developed early on, which was what's in your hands. So backstory, one of these events, one of my mates, Matt, he's a builder.
Yep.
And every home he'd build in Coalvale, Austin, for some wealthy people, he'd say, I'm going to give a cut of that to Forever Projects. And we were just asking him, what's motivating you? And he said, well, one day I just looked down, thought, well, what's in my hands? I've got a hammer. I can use that.
Yep.
And that became our mantra. And we just started saying, well, let's just ask our community, what's in your hands? And not like, what's in your hands? But curious, like what's in your hands?
Yeah.
And people started coming up with all these crazy ways to do it. And we thought instead of saying, hey, give this one thing called money and give this one amount, we just created a culture where our role is kind of to shine a light on people showing up using what's in their hands with what do they do. And that was the brand, I guess, that we built. When we got to a certain point, we had enough stories. We created a manifesto, a little beautiful magazine, which I think you've got a copy of.
I do.
And it's just a collection of all these stories of people using what's in their hands. So when we got to the point where we're connecting with people in tech, it's the same brand, same story, what's in your hands. So Rachel from Atlassian is a data scientist.
Yep.
She's like, I'm really good with numbers and da-da-da. So we had to kind of work out a way to get our Google sheet where all the local team in Tanzania are putting all the data in around like the impact that's happening. She de-identified it and then synced it with this snazzy new data visualization product Canva acquired. We're getting all the products for free. We're getting Rachel's time for free. And now we've got this really great visual of the impact, and it costs nothing because people use their product in their time.
And you know what? It's going way back to human nature again. It's the power of the village. It's everyone in the village coming together collectively, doing what they're good at. He's good at farming. He's good at this. Everyone's coming together to get to an end result. No one's actually having to do anything that they don't enjoy or are naturally good at. And that's, again, you're really bringing out the nature of humans in this whole project. So tell me, how old is Forever Projects now?
We'll be 10 next year.
Cool. So 10, that's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah,
we're still going. You are still young.
I said we're still going.
Oh, I thought you said you're still young. I said you're younger than me. No, you are still going. So where are you up to now? So tell me where, before we go into what you're doing right now, which I do want to talk about, what sort of size are we at? What's the scale? What have you done? You know, what can you give me? People love a few stats.
Yep. So since we started, we've now raised and sent 2 mil to Tanzania.
From $4,000 to 2 mil.
Yeah.
Crazy, huh?
And it's interesting, at the very start, one of the things people loved about those events with the $16,000 and so they knew that back in the day there was no charity. So they were giving it into our bank account in Australia. We withdrew it in Tanzanian shillings and then literally handed it.
Probably illegal.
Probably. But it's like, we're helping, malnourished children. And so people went, okay, 100% of the money I gave at that cafe event went. And so as we grew, we're like, how do we scale that experience of 100%? And so the early kind of supporters, friends and family round, we said to them, look, there's something here, but we need budget. We need to start paying some people. How about instead of you guys giving to the project in Tanzania, you give to us all the unsexy costs that go with charity. Our overheads are covered and we can maintain this 100% thing.
Yep.
So because of them, that 2 million, like every cent of that's gone. And we've kind of grown that core community, the people effectively like investors with no financial return on capital, but a really great feeling.
Yep.
And then that has impacted the program to not just operate in one city, but scale to 6. And I think the last I checked, it's 1,780 women and 2,283 babies across 6 cities that potentially could have been separated because of poverty and aren't.
Imagine putting them all in one big hall and looking at how many people that is that you've impacted.
Yeah.
That would be a tearjerker for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you think about it like that, just impacting one person's life actually impacts all the other people they touch in their lives, right? So when you think about that amount of people and how many people they are going to touch in all of their lives, plus all the people that have donated and how that's impacted them in their ways, and perhaps what they've done has impacted other people. The ripple effect is wild.
And community is at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Which is why, when we connected over the Paz's event with Community Collective, like that community is like the heartbeat of what we're doing globally, whether it's a community of women in Tanzania where a woman's in that desperate kind of vulnerable state and then connects with a community of women who have been on that journey. And they can say, I know where you were at. Look, my son's 7 months old. He's healthy. My business has started. Like, there's hope. And then also here as well, someone who wants to have a little dabble with being generous, meet someone who's using what's in their hands. Like, okay, like that's not unattainable for me to be a philanthropist. We can democratize that.
And it's going to become self-sustaining. Those people that you're setting up, she's got a business. She will get to a point where she's able to contribute, and without question will, and it will continue to, I mean, you're creating almost a living thing.
Yeah, and the women who first joined are now coming back, they're testing to see, what do they come back as a coach? Like as an alumni, you've got like Startmate, and they've got the coaches. The same kind of principle. So Shakura was when she was the 11th woman to join, set up a business as a seamstress. She's now got 2 apprentices, both women starting.
It's amazing.
As a seamstress, and both in her village. So it also means it takes pressure off the team to do all the work because they're effectively like getting in contractors. And so she's now diversifying her income. She's a seamstress and a coach.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So cool. So what are we doing right now? What's the focus right now, today?
Yep.
What's on your mind?
So like a good startup, thinking about going from that early adopter community where people are very gracious to meet you where you're at with your thing as you're throwing mud against the wall. As we're trying to scale, we're going, okay, how do we actually identify on niche? What's our target audience? What problem are we not asking them to solve for us, but what problem do they have and how can we solve that? And how do we show up as a brand that's actually helping people live with more purpose and connection to global impact and so on. So we're doing a lot of work around how do we get really tight on our brand positioning, how do we feed our funnel so that people who would be delighted to meet us and engage with us do that. Practically, we're starting to do a lot of events. So we did an event in Melbourne last week where we're not getting people in a room and saying, okay, we've got you now.
Yep.
We're going to talk about Africa.
Don't ever do that.
No. And that's completely off brand for us. So instead, we're like, hey, what are the themes that are adjacent to Forever Projects? What are the things we're interested in that other people might be interested in? So we're fascinated with community and how when people come together in community for a cause bigger than themselves, it doesn't need to be a charity. It could be a run club, or it could be a community of startup founders. So we curated an event down in Melbourne, panelists. So we had Paz, Laura and Steph from Kick. We had Matt from Birchall. And then we had Shay, one of my friends who runs the Jesus GM of the Melbourne Mavericks, netball. Janie Martino from Smile and Wine facilitated it. And we just got 140 people in the room and said, okay, at Forever Projects, we really want to learn from the best about how to create community. Why would we keep that learning to ourselves? So go. And that was a really great touch point for people with us because they're getting a sense of what we're like as a community. they're getting a sense of their mission, because at the heart of our mission is community over in Tanzania. And the response was great. It wasn't like we were turning up to get, similar to you guys, like you're showing up to add value. And if they walk away and never do anything with us again, hopefully they had fuel for their journey. So we're trying to just really, how do we build awareness of forever projects and like our values at that top of funnel awareness stage, and how do we then, let's just get curious about that and see how it works.
140 people is a good show.
It's awesome. And it's because of the caliber of people that we're able to curate on the panel. So people weren't coming to hear about me and forever projects.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, but I can tell you, like looking at the list, most people I've never heard of. So, and that's the thing cool. It's like using what's in their hands. So those people have a profile and have expertise, and they're using what's in their hands, which is their time and their experience and their emotional labor, to sit there with a spotlight for 45 minutes and be interviewed. And then their people, some of those people become our people too. So I think that's really cool. So we're just going to test that, as a growth channel and see how we go. But in terms of, but by starting with adding value.
And you've got an event here next week.
Yeah, we've got one. So we're doing one with Caitlin, as you know, Lady Brains. And so another theme adjacent to us is we see the ripple effect of what happens when you invest in women. And we also see the headwinds and tailwinds, mainly headwinds, that they face as they try and get their startups going. So panel of 4 female founders. Caitlin's kind of facilitating that. And then we've got some featured guests who are the investors backing these women. And at the same time, we've got these really cool displays like we had in the cafe back in the day, just around the room of like some of the founders in our portfolio. And the investors in our community are people using what's in their hands. So it's like that subtle introduction to our work that's non-preachy and hopefully really hopeful. Yeah.
And are you registered up for that? Is it full? Are you still looking for people to come?
Yeah, still looking for people to come.
So we'll put the link in the comments below.
Sure.
Absolutely. And can you tell me who the panelists are?
Yep.
You've got Caitlin.
So Caitlin's facilitator. Yep. So we've got Kate Hull from Freight Exchange. She's part of the Innovation-Based Summit community.
Yep.
We've got Jenna Leo from Like Family, one of the Giant Leap founders. We have Margot Balch from the 1-2, one of the Antler. I think Antler I saw has walked up.
Yeah, they're just next up.
Yeah. And we have Kate O'Keefe from Heatseeker, one of the Euphemia portfolio. So some really awesome people, and they get our mission better than anyone because they have that lived experience of I am a female founder, and I know what it's like. So I think a lot of the insights they share will be really great for us
100%.
To kind of help people understand the mission and what we're doing.
And of course, you're always raising money, right? So we'll put another link in there for that too.
Yes.
Or maybe we can put it all in the same link. I don't know. We'll work it out. Anyway, click all the links below. But and in terms of that, how does that work for you guys? Is it like a traditional charity? Do you link up and follow a particular person? Like if you, so for example, I talked about the sponsoring a child. Do you do anything like that, or is it more generic? Or how does that work if someone's interested in contributing? What can they expect in that sort of journey with you?
Yep. So we tried initially.
It's quite hard to do that, I imagine.
Yeah, like the scaling it was challenging. So initially, the power of the program over there, it's a 12-month journey from poverty to independence, and it is a roller coaster like the founder journey. So we thought, what if we connect groups of people here that combine to give 100 a month, because 100 a month for 12 months what it costs to get a woman through that program. Connect them on a WhatsApp group with one of, not the woman herself, but like one of the Tanzanian team, and they can kind of give you a bit of an inside look into what it's like. But our intention there was to create connection for our donors here and income for the team. The impact was more work for the team. And we're trying to take that fundraising burden off them so they can like double down on what they do best. So we then went, well, let's just iterate that. Like the helpful parts were the sustainable, reliable income from monthly donations. So we're just like, let's just more see it like we've got a collective kind of giving coming regularly through monthly donations. And then when someone gives 30 a month, they know they're one of the people that's laddering up to give 6,000 a month, and that's helping this many people. So they feel like that's how I'm connected to my impact, rather than me helping this person. It's us helping this group. And we've start trying to test things like, what if we ran like a annual giving meeting instead of an AGM, where these people could jump on a Zoom, connect with the local partners, and then we get out of the way and they can just kind of ask the team who are doing the work questions about it if they're curious. So starting to test like different things like that. But also then going, we think that would be valuable for a donor. But for half of them, they're like, I'm busy. I just want to be able to know that my money's going where it says it's going to go. That's great. So we're just like a startup trying to work out where's the value prop for people.
And you're doing some trips, right? Because you asked me to go on one of those trips, which I would have loved to have gone on.
Won't be the last.
So maybe the next one. So when has that happened already?
That's going to be July 25.
July 25, right.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I remember when you sent that to me, gosh, it was a few months ago now, and I looked into it and it just looked awesome, but it was just too long a period of time for me. But tell us a little bit about that, because I think that would be, I would love to do that with my kids, maybe at a little later date, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I think you've been onto the continent, right? So like there's something that's so magical about people in that culture, and like they live in a world of scarcity, but they have this abundance posture. And it's hard to put into words, and you experience it, you don't forget it. So that's a gift from that culture to us, and we want to kind of give people a sense of that. And as a way to kind of be introduced to the Work of Forever projects, not in a kind of volunteerism, kind of white saviorism kind of thing, but just more we're going to learn. But also, let's climb Kilimanjaro, let's go on a Serengeti safari, all that sort of stuff. So giving people like immersion.
That's the word.
Yeah.
That is the word.
Yeah. And we thought also people grow, I believe, like as a teacher, like people grow best when they're stretched out of their comfort zone and in a company and like in an environment with exceptional people. So what if we curated a group of exceptional people from the Oz NZ tech ecosystem? They went on a trip and then, like the trips we've seen, like Innovation Day did that trip up to Northern Territory, similar kind of vibe, where you don't need to do a whole lot to prompt these founders and these people to kind of learn a ton from each other.
No, they're ready to go.
So that's the kind of hypothesis around the value that we could create for people in that trip. Yeah.
I think travel, I mean, you would have seen this as a teacher. I mean, I've seen it with my children. Every time we've taken them traveling, they grow up. Like they don't grow up on the trip. You get back and like a week or so later you go, oh my God, they've changed.
Yeah.
And I think particularly if they've been somewhere they've never been before, I think it has huge impacts, not just on adults, but children more so. It's probably more evident because they're changing anyway, but I just think it has a massive impact.
Yeah, so we'd love to at some point go, okay, there's this trip, who's it for? People who don't want to be on a trip with kids. This trip, who's it for? People who want to bring their kids.
Yeah.
And it's, and some people might want to go on the other one, but like, let's start to kind of...
Maybe just take the kids. No, that's babysitting. That's babysitting.
There'd be a lot of paperwork there.
That would be tricky. My kids have done some fascinating trips all over the place. Like my daughter went off to Vietnam and saw all the tunnels, and then she went to up to the Northern Territory to one of the most remote places in the world. Like some of those things that she's done on her own with the school, they're more set up to do it. Changes their perspective on things. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so last question. Well, you're still very Tanzania focused. Is that the intention? Obviously, I know it's a big place, but do you have grand designs to take it way beyond that and further into other places in Africa or potentially even the globe?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously the conditions that would potentially separate a family because of poverty aren't, sadly, just in Tanzania. They're in lots of places. So our big vision is, what if we can create a brand where people who care about this issue and want to kind of understand it and connect with it, like we've described today, like they could. And then we've got like a VC, you've got your investors who are your donors, and then you've got your portfolio, which is our impact partners. I heard Simon Griffiths from Who Gives a Crap talk about this once, where he was like, they've got partners in lots of different countries. They've got partners who are innovating new things, partners who are like doing a pretty tried and tested thing. And the diversification across geography, across different models, helps them like mitigate the risk that the money they're getting at Who Gives a Crap isn't going to actually go to where it's supposed to go. So big picture, I love that model. So it'd be awesome to kind of grow, pending funding, like the portfolio that which we're doing. And I think that we can then take, so many of these organizations doing great stuff, but they're juggling like the fundraising, resourcing, and the delivery of the service.
It's difficult, right? Because you can't have one without the other. Just like a startup founder's trying to raise and build tech, it's the same juggle, right? And you have to do both. And it's a massive struggle.
Yeah, and I think it's like what you guys do at Nudge. Like you've got the recruitment that you can bring in, and like, okay, I can. You could either build that capability in house, or I could like provide it for you, and then but you're getting so good at it because you're doing it for lots of people. Similar kind of thing with
10,000 hours, all those kind of the different things. Absolutely. You should look at doing a collaboration with Who Gives a Crap. I mean, you could do a toilet roll. I don't know what you'd put on it, but you could do maybe just your face. I don't know. I think what they've done is amazing.
So
it's such a cool journey.
Yeah. We just kicked off a nourishment partnership with Heaps Normal.
Oh, really?
So connected with Andy, such a legend, and so they're generously supplying drinks for our events. So next week I just got my new case of their. I can't remember it's the triple IPA.
There's so many non-alcoholic drinks. A lot of my friends who used to work in the alcohol industry now all work in the non-alcohol industry.
Yeah, right.
It's quite the shifts. It's enormous.
Yeah.
I'm quite fascinated.
Yeah, love what they're doing. Like I remember seeing at Purpose Conference last year, like Andy chatting with Vanessa.
They've done a great job
as the head of creative, and they were like having a chat. I'm like, these guys are going to come up with some collab here, and then 2 months later, it's the cheeky IPA. It's this arse on the can.
I know, but the name, heaps normal. I mean, just to come up with that first, they've got the brain power in there to come up with stuff. There'll be many more, I have no doubt.
Yep.
That's super cool. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Steve. Love what you guys do.
I'm looking forward to your event next week.
Me too.
And look, we'll get this out before then. And if people want to register, they can come along to the event. And if people want to donate, they can certainly do that as well.
Legend. But, I want to say too, thank you for using what's in your hands, because you're using your platform here. You guys are filming the event for free, and it's it's super inspiring that the posture that you show up with and that you talk about, you live and breathe it. Thank you.
Well, I'm just a little bit intimidated, having watched your last video at the last event with such high quality production value. We were like, oh my God, we got this event next week. We're gonna have to really make sure we know.
I saw Paz's one. You guys kill it.
Thank you for that. Well, thanks for coming on, and I'm looking forward to watching the journey.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.